The wind hit the old relay station like a warning, sharp metallic carrying the scent of distant lightning. Leon Harker woke to Echo's claws skittering across the concrete floor, the dog pacing in tight, frantic circles. Not thunder, not fear, something else. Echo, froze ears, pinned nose, pressed to a single seam in the floor. A faint tremor rolled beneath them, subtle as a heartbeat in stone. Leon knelt, pressed his palm to the cold surface. There it was again. A thud. Hollow. Too deliberate to be natural. Echo backed away, growling. Something was moving under the station. Leon grabbed his flashlight, its beam slicing through the dim room in a shaky cone of pale yellow. Outside, dry lightning cracked over the ridge, illuminating the station's rusted tower for a split second before darkness swallowed it again. Echo didn't look toward the storm. He stayed locked on that same seam in the floor, muscles taut, tail low, a silent warning carved into his stance. The tremor came again, softer this time, followed by a faint rush of cool air rising from the metal plate, as if the mountain itself exhaled beneath them. Leon held his breath, listening. No wind, no machinery, yet the air smelled faintly of wet stone, impossible on a night this dry. Echo nudged Leon's hand, urgently whining once before stepping toward the door. He wasn't running from something. He wanted Leon to follow. Lightning flashed again, framing the ridge in stark white. For a heartbeat, Leon thought he saw the silhouette of a vehicle farther down the valley, lights flickering, then vanishing into the dark. Echo barked once, sharp and insistent. Whatever was happening below the station, it wasn't done. Leon tightened his grip on the flashlight and wondered, was he truly alone up here? The relay station quieted again, though quiet in the mountains never meant stillness. It meant the low hum of wind threading through steel braces on the tower. It meant Echo's slow breathing as the dog waited for Leon to decide what came next. And it meant the sharp clarity of a night so cold it felt newly made. Leon lowered the flashlight, letting the beam fall to the concrete. Whatever was under the station could wait until morning. For now, he needed to understand the place he had chosen, maybe foolishly, to call home. He pushed open the heavy metal door and stepped outside. Echo followed, immediately pressed close to his leg until the dog was certain the darkness held no immediate threat. Only then did he drift forward, nose moving like a compass needle. The ridge stretched in all directions, a rim of rough land carved by ancient wind. The old relay station sat at its highest point, perched where rusted anchors bit deep into bedrock. 50 years ago, it carried signals across 3 counties. Now it carried nothing but the memory of a function, a purpose. Leon found strangely comforting. Purpose could be rebuilt. If a building could find a second life, maybe a man could too. He pulled his jacket tighter. The night's dryness felt unnatural. Every weather briefing he'd checked before isolating himself here had warned of a long drought cycle. Dry lightning meant something worse was coming eventually. Fire, instability, erosion. Out in the world below, those were environmental concerns. Up here, they were personal. Echo eased forward to the edge of the ridge, his silhouette a sharp cutout against the faint glow of the valley town miles away. Leon joined him. From here, the land looked like a sleeping beast, ribs of rock veins of dried creek beds, a spine of fir trees running down the slope. Beautiful but fragile. One wrong spark could remake it entirely. Leon didn't want to think about sparks. He crouched beside Echo and laid a hand on the dog's shoulder. "Tell me we didn't walk into trouble," he murmured. Echo flicked an ear but kept staring at the valley. The dog wasn't wrong. Trouble had a way of finding soldiers, even the ones who no longer wanted the title. Morning came with a milky light that softened the edges of the world. Frost clung to the station's metal siding. When Leon pushed open the door, the hinges squealed like something half asleep. He stepped onto the gravel path and breathed in cold mountain air. Echo bolted out past him, skidding to a stop and plunging his nose under a low bush. A vole darted away. Echo didn't chase it. He wasn't that kind of dog. He simply cataloged the scent, reassured himself this patch of land still belonged to them. Leon stretched his stiff leg, the old shrapnel scar pulling against tendons. Pain had become a familiar companion, less a warning than a reminder of where he'd been. Afghanistan felt both close and impossibly far, like a dream he couldn't wake from or return to. He brushed the thought away. Today, he would repair the station's south wall, patch the solar array, and check the roof braces before the next windstorm rolled in. Useful tasks, predictable tasks, tasks that kept the mind's darker corners quiet. He lifted the ladder from where it leaned against the tower, set it beneath the warped external panel, and climbed. The metal groaned under his weight. He tested each rung before trusting it. Echo circled below as if ready to catch him should the ladder slip. "That's not happening," Leon said under his breath. His voice sounded strange in the open air. He'd grown unused to hearing it. From the roof, the view expanded into something almost sacred. The valley far below lay wrapped in morning haze. A thin ribbon of river glinted between cottonwoods. The town, a mere handful of roofs and chimneys, looked like an accidental arrangement of civilization at the edge of the wilderness. He unhooked his toolkit and got to work. At first, his movements were mechanical. Unscrew, pry, replace, test the line. But as the minutes passed, the rhythm of fixing something, of redeeming a piece of infrastructure long forgotten, settled into him. The station didn't judge. It didn't ask questions. It simply required patience and effort. Leon could give it both. He found the faded evacuation diagram behind a loose panel paper, stiff with age corners, blistered by years of heat. Bold lines indicated tunnels and shafts beneath the ridge. The label Reservoir B was circled but crossed out with red pencil, as if someone wanted to erase its memory. Leon stared at it, frowning. No reason a communications outpost would need a reservoir this high up, unless it wasn't a water reservoir at all, or unless it had been repurposed. He folded the diagram carefully and slid it into the inner pocket of his jacket. Echo barked once from below, impatient. "Yeah," Leon called down. "I know. One thing at a time." But Echo wasn't looking at the ladder anymore. The dog stood facing the northeast slope, ears rigid, body lined with tension. Leon followed his gaze. The slope was empty, quiet, calm. But Echo didn't misread landscapes. Something had moved. Or someone. By noon, Leon had reinforced the wall and patched the solar wiring. He sat on the steps of the station eating canned beans straight from the tin, Echo lying with his head across Leon's boot. The mountain heat rose slowly, but even at midday the air remained crisp. Pine needles shimmered under sunlight. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals like invisible roads. It should have been peaceful. Leon wanted it to be. He rubbed the medic's patch he kept tucked in his pocket. The edges were frayed, fabric faded to a washed-out green. Once it had been stitched to his uniform sleeve. Once it had meant something. He hadn't touched it in months. Echo lifted his head, amber eyes scanning Leon's face. The dog nudged the patch, then nudged Leon's hand, a gentle, persistent encouragement. Leon exhaled slowly. "Don't start," he muttered. "Not today." But memories had sharp edges, and sometimes they cut without warning. A roadside blast. The metallic scent of blood on sand. Echo dragging him by his vest strap, while he tried and failed to reach the younger medic who had looked up to him. A freeze. A hesitation. A guilt with weight and teeth. He blinked hard. Echo leaned against his knee, warm and grounding. "You're too good at this," Leon said softly. "Too good at knowing." He swallowed the rest of the beans, set the empty tin aside, and stood. "Come on, we'll hike." Echo leapt to his feet, instantly tail swaying with controlled excitement. Hiking didn't erase memories, but it quieted them. Mountains demanded attention, every step, every breath. It left little room for ghosts. They descended the ridge along a narrow animal trail. The earth here was dry, cracked in places. Fallen branches snapped underfoot. Leon tested his weight carefully. Uneven terrain always woke the old injury. Halfway down the slope, Echo paused, nose working furiously. Then he darted left tail stiff. Leon followed, careful but swift. The dog stopped at a dead tree whose roots clung to the hillside like brittle fingers. Something metal glinted beneath the exposed root. Leon knelt. It was a corroded metal tag, rectangular, punched with numbers and letters. A project code. One he didn't recognize. Where'd this come from? Echo pawed the soil again, revealing a second fragment, this one stamped with a partial word, hydro. Leon frowned. Hydro. What hydrology? Hydroelectric, hydraulic. The drought map from the diner flickered in his mind. The crossed-out reservoir diagram. The tremor beneath the station last night. Too many coincidences. Echo growled softly, low and uneasy. Leon pocketed the metal pieces. Let's keep moving. But even as they walked, Leon's thoughts circled like the hawk overhead. Something was happening under this mountain, something Echo sensed before he'd even arrived. 2 days later, supplies ran low. Leon strapped Echo's pack, slung his own over his shoulder, and began the long hike down to Broken Spur, a small town that looked like it was barely holding onto the map. Broken Spur had a single diner, a post office, a hardware store, and 3 streets that ended before they began. The kind of place people stayed in only if they had roots deep enough to anchor them. As Leon pushed open the diner door, a bell chimed. Conversation dipped for a heartbeat, just long enough for everyone to register the stranger. Echo stayed pressed to Leon's leg posture, disciplined eyes scanning. Leon picked the corner booth with his back to the wall. The waitress approached mid-50 seconds, silver hair in a braid, and eyes that suggested she'd raised more kids than she had patience left. "Coffee?" she asked. Leon nodded. She poured, then studied Echo. That dog-trained Leon kept his voice level. "Search and rescue. Retired." "Smart eyes," she said. "Yours, too. You military." He didn't answer, but she seemed to accept the silence. The TV above the counter droned with local news. Leon wasn't listening until a familiar ridge silhouette appeared on screen. "Clearpath Resources has announced preliminary plans for a sustainable water initiative," the anchor said cheerfully. Stock footage played of sparkling water pouring into crystal glasses. Officials say new jobs could revitalize the Northern Valley. Leon's jaw tightened. Echo looked up at the screen and then at him as if connecting the dots first. The waitress followed his gaze. "They've been sniffing around for months," she said. "Surveyors, consultants, a whole mess of experts who don't know the land from a pothole." Leon sipped his coffee. "You trust them," she snorted. "I trust the weather more than corporations, and I don't trust the weather at all." Echo sat stiffly gaze, pinned to the TV silhouette that matched their ridge. Something cold settled in Leon's chest. He paid in cash, left a tip, and headed for the hardware store. He needed tools, sealant, extra rope, batteries. "Expecting a storm?" the owner asked as he rang up the supplies. Leon hesitated. "Expecting something." Echo barked softly as if agreeing. Back on the ridge by evening, the sky stretched wide and pale blue washed clean by cold air and silence. Leon climbed the relay tower ladder, Echo pacing at the base until he settled into a watchful sit. At the top, Leon sat on a metal grating and let his legs dangle over empty air. Below him, the world softened. Pines blended into shadow. The river caught the last of the sun's gold. A soft breeze lifted Echo's ears. Leon didn't speak, didn't think, just listened. The quiet wasn't empty tonight. It felt kind, inviting, as if the mountain itself exhaled a long-held breath. Below, Echo finally lay down, resting his chin on his paws, the universal sign that for this moment at least he sensed no threat. Leon watched the horizon darken into a sea of indigo. For a heartbeat, he felt something unfamiliar and almost foreign pressing at the edges of his ribs. Hope. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that lived in stillness and steady breaths. A whisper from somewhere deep inside him asked, what if this place could be more than an escape? A new tremor, subtle, rhythmic, rippled under the metal grating. Echo sprang to his feet below, barking sharply, tail stiff. Leon froze. The mountain was speaking again, and this time, it wasn't whispering. The tremor faded as quickly as it came, leaving the tower vibrating under Leon's boots. A breeze picked up cool and sharp, brushing the back of his neck. Echo barked again, short-clipped, urgent. Leon climbed down metal rungs, ringing beneath him. Echo met him halfway, circling muzzle, nudging his thigh before darting back toward the station's door. "All right, show me," Leon murmured, though his throat felt tight. Inside all was as he'd left it, tools stacked neatly, radio parts on the table, morning frost melting on the windows. Except Echo made a beeline for the narrow corridor that led deeper into the station's interior. Not the floor seam from last night, another spot entirely. Echo planted himself there, rigid. His nose tracked the length of the concrete, then zeroed in on a faintly discolored square about 2 feet across. A service panel, old with a hairline crack along one edge. Leon crouched. He ran his fingertips across the concrete, colder than the rest of the floor, and beneath it, a tiny thread of air, faint but unmistakable, sifted upward. "How long have you known this was here?" Leon whispered. Echo didn't look at him, didn't blink, just stared at the panel as if it were alive. Leon unbuckled his multi-tool and pried gently at the corner. Concrete flaked away like thin ice. The panel gave a soft, metallic click. It opened. A draft of cold, damp air rolled over Leon's face, air that didn't belong in a building sealed for decades. Echo's ears flattened, his tail lowered, not in fear but in recognition. There was something down there. Leon angled the flashlight into the dark. A vertical shaft descended 20 feet to a narrow landing. Pipes thick and rust-colored lined the walls, disappearing into shadow. He hesitated. This wasn't on any blueprint he'd found in the storage closet. The relay station had no documented basement, no long-term water infrastructure, and yet the air smelled like distant rain on stone. Or like the river 200 feet below, even though no channel ran this high up the mountain. Echo nosed his hand. Once. Twice. Hard. A push that said, "We go." Leon exhaled slowly. "All right then." He clipped a rope to an old eye hook, drilled into the concrete, tested it twice, then swung his weight over the edge. His boots touched the landing. Echo followed with surprising agility, leaping gracefully and landing behind him with a soft thud. Leon's flashlight sliced across dust, rust, and time. The corridor ahead stretched only 10 feet before turning sharply left. Walls thick with mineral stains. Puddles of condensation forming in shallow cracks. The temperature dropped another few degrees. Hydro, something Leon mumbled, remembering the metal tag Echo had dug up on the slope. But why here? Echo trotted ahead, nose grazing the wall. Every few steps he paused, listening to something Leon couldn't hear. They reached the corner, and the world changed. The tunnel opened into a small, man-made cavern, the ceiling reinforced with steel mesh, the floor uneven, where natural rock met concrete. Water seeped from a vein in the far wall, dripping steadily into a narrow trough carved decades ago. The air shimmered with cool mist. Leon approached the wall and touched the damp rock. It felt alive, pulse-like, as though pressure shifted inside the mountain. Echo sniffed the trough, then gave a small snort, sneezing once. Not in alarm, in recognition, as if the scent matched something he'd smelled outside. Leon cupped some of the water. It was frigid, clear, cleaner than the creeks below. This wasn't a reservoir, it wasn't storage, it was access. A maintenance point for a natural underground aquifer. He felt the weight of the discovery settle on him. Whoever built this chamber understood the mountain's anatomy, and they'd carved this tunnel not for extraction but monitoring. Why hide it? A faint hum echoed from somewhere down the corridor beyond a sound. Leon's military brain recognized instantly. Machinery. And not old machinery. His pulse quickened. Someone's been down here recently. As if responding, Echo stiffened. His ears twitched toward the dark passage. Then a metallic clank reverberated faintly through the rock, followed by a low, throaty vibration that made dust rain from the ceiling mesh. Echo growled, a sound deep enough to vibrate in Leon's chest. "Move," Leon said softly. He didn't have to tell Echo twice. The passage beyond the chamber forked. One path sloped upward, narrow, hand-hewn, sharp turns, suggesting it led nowhere useful. The other path sloped down, then rose again in a tight curve. Echo chose the latter, sprinting ahead, but stopping every 10 feet to look back and ensure Leon followed. They emerged into a narrow access tunnel, with metal rungs leading up to a hinged hatch. The hatch had fresh scrapes on the interior, bright silver, revealing new disturbances. Leon pushed. It opened smoothly onto dry earth and dense brush. Echo hopped out first, sniffing immediately. Leon followed and froze. Boot prints, at least 4 distinct sets. Recent. Edges crisp moisture not yet evaporated. And tire tracks thick off-road treads cutting through the brush toward the old service road. Leon studied them, jaw tightening. These weren't hikers. They were too uniform, too purposeful. Equipment-grade boots and specialized vehicle tracks. Echo's fur bristled. He faced the north slope, growling low. Leon crouched beside him and looked in the same direction. Through the trees, half hidden behind a stand of spruce, a black shape crouched on metal legs. A drone. Large. Industrial. Its rotors still spinning down, faint lights blinking. As Leon stared, a second drone lifted off from the valley below, rising, pivoting, aiming directly toward the ridge like a silent mechanical hawk. So they were watching the station. And the mountain. And whatever was beneath them. "Come on," Leon whispered, leading Echo back toward the hatch. "We're done out here." But Echo resisted for a split second, just long enough for Leon to register something else in the air, a scent he hadn't smelled in years. Diesel, fresh, close. Somebody had been standing right where they were minutes ago. He scanned the trees, no movement, but the silence felt wrong, heavy, too many questions, too few answers. He sealed the hatch and climbed back inside the tunnel. Back in the chamber, Leon lingered for a moment, staring at the rock vein where water shimmered. A forgotten aquifer. Hidden tunnels, survey drones, boot prints, machinery humming deep below. This was no coincidence. He closed his eyes for a moment, one hand braced against the cool rock. He'd come here to disappear. He hadn't come here to fight anyone. Not again. Not after everything he'd already lost. Echo pressed his head into Leon's thigh, steady, warm grounding. Leon opened his eyes. "All right," he whispered. "We're not looking for trouble." A pause. "But we're not walking away from it either." He turned, lifting the flashlight. The beam trembled ever so slightly, but his grip did not. "Let's go home," he said. Echo took point, trotting back up the tunnel with the certainty of a creature who knew the path before it was ever carved. They emerged into the relay station, sealing the panel behind them. Outside, the wind picked up strong enough to rattle the tower. Echo stationed himself at the door, watchful. Leon folded the evacuation diagram and spread it on the table. Reservoir B, crossed out, hidden. Access through tunnels no one officially acknowledged. He traced the path they'd walked with a fingertip. If someone wanted the mountain, if they wanted what was under it, they would come back. He felt the weight of that truth settle on his shoulders. Not as fear, as responsibility. Echo lay at his feet, head lifted, amber eyes fixed on the door as if he expected footsteps any moment. Leon whispered the thought he didn't want to admit but couldn't ignore. This wasn't an accident. We didn't find this place. He looked down at Echo. It found us. Outside, dry lightning forked across the sky, white, silent, ominous. Tomorrow he would go into town, ask questions. Maybe meet the hydrologist he'd heard mentioned. Maybe uncover what the mountain was trying to warn him about. For tonight he stood by the window, flashlight off, letting the storm paint the ridge in brief electric strokes. Somewhere under his boots the aquifer pulsed, steady, ancient, alive. Echo growled, once soft but certain. Leon answered under his breath, "Yeah, I hear it too." The morning after the tunnel discovery arrived, sharp and colorless, the kind of winter dawn that seemed to scrape the world clean. Frost clung to the relay station windows in white-veined patterns, and the wind hissed around the tower legs like a warning leaking from the mountain itself. Leon didn't sleep much. He sat half the night at the table with the evacuation diagram spread beneath his hands, tracing the path from the corridor to the chamber to the hidden exit. Echo lay at the door, refusing to rest, fully ears shifting toward every scrape of wind or shifting branch. By sunrise, Leon accepted a truth he had resisted for the last 24 hours. Whatever was happening under this ridge, he couldn't ignore it. He had one advantage left: a lifetime of reading terrain, pressure, threat. The mountain had spoken through Echo, and Echo had never been wrong. He strapped on his pack, checked the batteries in his radio scanner, and clipped Echo's collar. In town, by noon, he murmured. Echo's tail flicked once. Approval. They descended the steep switchback trail toward the valley. As they hiked, Leon's boots crushed frost in brittle pops. The air tasted metallic, the prelude to weather shifting. He scanned the tree line constantly. Echo did too. The dog's posture was loose, but ready, watching both the ridge above and the old overgrown service road below. Nothing moved. But that was its own kind of message. Quiet could be camouflage. Broken Spur looked different this morning. Streets still empty, but tension clung to the air like static. At the corner near the diner, a white SUV idled with tinted windows, engine rumbling low. Leon noted it tucked the detail away. Inside the hardware store, Mara looked up from her ledger. "Morning, stranger." She paused, eyes narrowing. "Or is it Captain Leon?" Stiffened slightly. "It's just Leon." Mara smiled in that knowing, weary way only people who'd lived long lives in small towns could manage. "Well, just Leon?" You walked in like a man tracking more than pine needles on his boots. He didn't deny it. Instead, he asked, "Anyone surveying the ridge lately?" Her expression sharpened. "Plenty. I've seen trucks up that way. Corporate plates. Out of town, men acting like they own the place." She lowered her voice. "You run into them." Echo nudged Leon's knee, gentle pressure, a subtle reminder not to share too much. "Not directly," Leon lied. "Humph. They came in here last week asking about water tables. Buying up topo maps. One of them, slick hair, expensive jacket, asked me where a man could get a guided trip up your ridge." Leon's grip tightened on the counter. "You tell him anything." Mara gave him a look. "Do I look like I give directions to people who talk with their teeth more than their eyes?" He didn't smile, but the knot in his stomach eased slightly. Then the bell above the door chimed. 3 men walked in. All uniforms that weren't uniforms, matching charcoal jackets, matching boots, matching clipped haircuts. Not military. Professional corporate field crew. The kind used for environmental surveys that were really acquisition scouts. The lead man spotted Leon instantly. His smile was smooth and cold, as if pre-cut from business card stock. "Morning," he said. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Leon didn't speak. The man sized him up with a confidence that came from knowing he had resources behind him. "Barrett Sloan," he said, extending a hand. "Regional Operations Manager for ClearPath Resources." Leon didn't take the hand. Sloan's smile widened. "You must be the gentleman living in the old relay station." Mara bristled behind the counter. "Leon's a customer, Barrett. You want something, you ask me." But Sloan wasn't listening to her anymore. His eyes had fastened onto Leon with polite intimidation. "We're conducting some preliminary surveys," Sloan continued. "The county's considering a land use project up that way. Nothing to worry about, just standard procedure." Echo stepped in front of Leon and held his ground, not barking, not lunging, just a precisely chosen position that said, "No closer." Sloane raised an eyebrow. Fine animals, Belgian Malinois. Very loyal, very protective. He tilted his head slightly. Fascinating traits depending on the situation. Leon quietly shifted his stance. His voice came out even. "You need something. Only cooperation," Sloane replied. "And access. The ridge is public, of course, but your presence complicates our schedule. We'd be happy to help you relocate temporarily, of course, so work can continue smoothly." Leon's jaw tightened. Not interested. Sloane's expression didn't twitch. "The county hearing is in 3 weeks. I'd suggest you attend." He leaned just slightly closer. "Might help you stay informed." Echo's growl rumbled low. Sloane stepped back, still smiling. "Pleasure, Leon. We'll see you around." The 3 men left as smoothly as they'd entered. Mara hissed under her breath. "You want trouble, that man's the kind that brings it wrapped in ribbon." Leon didn't need the warning. He'd already seen the danger in Sloane's eyes, the quiet certainty of a man accustomed to bending land and law to his will. He'd faced men like that in war zones. They wore different outfits, but their motives were always the same. "What's he?" after Mara asked. Leon didn't answer, because he didn't know yet, but he intended to find out. The county office sat in a squat brick building that looked like it had been dragged from a post-war brochure and left to fade. Leon stepped inside Echo, following with disciplined calm. A woman in a slate blue jacket sat at a table strewn with maps and folders. Mid-30 seconds, dark hair in a tight bun, eyes sharp enough to cut through bad data in seconds. She glanced up. "Can I help you?" Leon hesitated. "You're Dr. Reyes." "Yes. Hydrologist contracted by the county for watershed assessment." She studied him. "You aren't here for building permits." "No." Then Leon reached into his jacket and pulled out the metal tag Echo had dug up. He placed it gently on the table. Ana Reyes took one look at it, and her expression shifted from polite professionalism to something colder, more alert. "Where did you find this?" she asked. Leon didn't answer directly. "What is it?" "It's part of an old hydrostability trial," she said. "An experiment testing deep water pressure beneath fractured rock. These tags are rare. Most were lost when the project was shut down." Shut down. Why? Ana looked up, meeting his gaze. Because the data suggested that disturbing the aquifer could destabilize the ridge. Landslides, sinkholes, even microquakes. Leon felt the air leave his lungs. She added quietly, "This region isn't meant to be tapped deeply. The geology can't handle it." Leon unfolded the evacuation diagram. Then someone hid tunnels. Reservoir access, a whole chamber. Anna's eyes widened. "You've seen it," Leon nodded once. She leaned back, exhaling. "Clearpath doesn't know what they're playing with. If they drill, they could damage the entire valley." He felt Echo press against his leg as if sensing Leon's sudden tension. Anna lowered her voice. "If you're willing to talk more, I'd like to see the site." "No," Leon said quickly. Her brow furrowed. "Why not?" Leon answered after a long moment. "Because they're already watching." Anna didn't argue. She simply closed her folder. "Then we need to move fast." 3 weeks shrank to 3 days. The county hearing hall was packed, farmers, loggers, shop owners, faces lined by weather and worry. Sloane stood at the front, like a man presenting a miracle. A projector displayed glossy videos, smiling families, clean water bottles glinting under studio lights, promises of local jobs. "Clearpath's facility," Sloane said, "smoothly will revitalize this valley. We'll extract minimal volumes using state-of-the-art sustainable technology." Leon sat in the back, shoulders stiff. Echo lay under his chair, quiet but watching. Anna stepped forward when public comment opened. "The ridge geology is unstable," she said. "Deep extraction puts the entire region at risk." Sloane smiled tightly. "We appreciate Dr. Reyes's caution, but all our tests show." "What tests?" She cut in. "You haven't been granted access yet." Whispers filled the hall. Sloane's voice dropped a degree. "We've conducted preliminary models." Anna held up the corroded metal tag. "This area was flagged as unsafe for deep extraction decades ago." The supervisor leaned forward. "This is all very technical," Leon rose. His voice was low, steady. "There's infrastructure on the ridge you're not acknowledging." The crowd turned. Sloane's eyes narrowed. "Leon." "Maybe you shouldn't," Leon continued. "A tunnel system. Old. Fragile. Leading to an active water chamber." Gasps. Sloane's jaw tightened. "Ladies and gentlemen, please don't be misled by a hermit with a flashlight and an imagination." Leon stepped forward just one pace. Echo followed silently. Then let me ask, why are your drones on my ridge? Why are there boot prints by sealed access points? Why are you mapping drill spots before getting approval? The supervisor banged the gavel for silence. Sloane's mask cracked for half a second, a flicker of annoyance cutting through the charm. We follow all regulations, and our community outreach is ongoing. The hearing devolved quickly into a clash of voices, people shouting questions, some cheering the promise of jobs, others fearful of losing their wells. In the end, the board postponed the decision, but Sloane, standing near the exit, leaned in just enough for Leon to hear. "You can delay paperwork," he whispered, "but you can't stop progress." Then he walked away. Anna found Leon outside. "They're going to move forward anyway." Leon only nodded. "Then we prepare." It was the first time he didn't flinch from the word "we." The ridge greeted Leon with a cold that felt personal. As he and Echo approached the station, a low mechanical buzz rose overhead. A drone. It drifted above the treetops like a vulture made of carbon fiber. Echo growled deep in his chest, neck stiff. Leon tracked its path until it vanished toward the north. Later, as dusk fell, Echo slipped out of the station, returning 30 minutes later with something clamped between his teeth, a torn strip of high-visibility survey tape. Leon held it, thumb grazing the frayed edge. Then Echo trotted to the window, nose pressed hard against the glass tail rigid. "Show me," Leon said. They moved into the forest. Echo tracked with silent precision. The dog's body language changed the farther they followed, the marked path, ears tighter steps, slower breath, steady. They reached a small clearing, and there it was, a game camera strapped to a tree, not a hunter's camera, the same unfamiliar logo Leon had seen on Sloane's crew jackets. He reached for the camera. A sound cracked the air behind him. Metallic, sharp. The smell of burning sand and diesel slammed into his senses. Afghanistan. The ground rattled smoke, rising in impossible shapes. A younger medic's scream. Echo pulling him backward as the world went white. Leon froze. Echo nudged him hard 1, 2, 3 times. Leon's breath caught. He blinked, and the forest snapped back into clarity. "Not again," he whispered. He ripped the game camera from the tree. They returned to the station in silence. That night, Leon sat with his radio scanner tuned to low frequencies. Between static bursts, 2 words emerged faintly from some distant channel. Controlled burn. Echo's ears perked. Leon's stomach dropped. He had seen enough wildfire zones to understand what those words could hide. "Sloane's not waiting," Leon murmured. For the next week, Leon worked like a man possessed. He cleared brush, widened fire breaks, reinforced the tunnel supports using salvaged steel from abandoned mining shacks. He installed water barrels, rigged a sprinkler line with makeshift valves, and built escape markers inside the tunnel network. Noah arrived on the 4th morning, a lanky 17-year-old with a mop of curly hair and a backpack full of enthusiasm. "You're the guy from the hearing," Noah said. "People say you're living on the ridge." Leon didn't look up from the trench he was digging. "Shouldn't you be in school? It's Saturday. Should be out with friends then." "Don't really have any," Noah admitted. "But I'm good with tools." Leon paused. Echo trotted over to Noah, sniffed him thoroughly, then gave an approving snort. Leon sighed. "Grab the shovel." Noah grinned. Echo supervised from the shade, occasionally intervening with a bark whenever Noah drifted too close to unstable ground. By evening, Noah had proved useful, strong, eager, and careful with Echo. "You're building a fire break?" Noah asked. Leon nodded. Because of ClearPath, Leon didn't answer. Noah kicked a pine cone. "They've been staging stuff behind the old logging road. Fuel drums, brush piles. Looks sketchy." Leon stopped dead. "You're sure?" "Yeah. Ran into them yesterday. They told me the area was off limits. One guy shoved me." Leon's jaw clenched. "Never go back there." Noah swallowed. "Okay." Echo pressed close to Leon's side, mirroring his tension perfectly. Something ugly was brewing on the ridge. Something deliberate. The brush fire started 2 nights later. Lightning didn't spark it. Weather didn't feed it. It came from a single ignition point by the logging spur placed with precision. Leon reached it first, Echo racing ahead. Noah followed, coughing in the smoke. The fire was small but vicious flames chewing through underbrush. Leon dropped his pack, pulled a hand pump from inside, and began dousing the edges, stamping down embers. "Stay behind me," he barked at Noah. Echo circled them, barking sharply whenever a flare-up leapt sideways. A crack thundered above. Leon looked up. A dead branch, flame-tipped, snapped loose from a half-rotten pine. "Move," he shouted. He shoved Noah sideways, but pain seared through his leg as the branch crashed down, missing him by inches. The smoke thickened, choking visibility. Noah stumbled, eyes watering. I can't see, he cried. Stay low, Leon said, voice rasping. Smoke roared around them like a living thing. The world blurred, heat pressed in hard, and suddenly Leon was somewhere else, a city street, a blast wave, screams swallowed by smoke, the taste of metal and sand, the weight of a body he couldn't save. His breath caught, chest tightening. Not now, not again. Leon Noah coughed. What do I do? Leon's mind blanked. Everything narrowed to a tunnel of light and sound. He felt himself freezing, the same paralysis that had cost him 3 lives years ago. Then Echo slammed into his hip, hard. The impact knocked him sideways, shocking his senses back online. Echo barked urgent, commanding. Leon blinked smoke from his eyes. We move, he shouted. He grabbed Noah's arm. Echo ran ahead, barking direction like a guide. They ducked behind a boulder as another wave of heat gusted past. Echo led them through a narrow cut between rocks, an escape route Leon hadn't noticed before. The dog's instincts were perfect. By the time county volunteers arrived to contain the fire, Leon sat kneeling in the ash, coughing, one hand clenched in Echo's fur. Noah sat beside him, shaken. You saved my life. Leon shook his head. Echo did. Echo rested his head in Leon's lap chest, rising and falling in steady rhythm. Leon's eyes stung not just from smoke. He had failed once. He hadn't failed this time, but he'd come close. Too close. That night when the ridge went silent again and the fire finally died, Leon stood at the edge of the station staring into the darkness. He almost left. He almost packed what he had and walked away from the ridge, from the tunnels, from whatever fight was coming. Because he couldn't do it again, couldn't be the reason someone else got hurt. But then Noah's voice echoed in his mind. You saved my life. Echo leaned against him quietly, and far below 2 flickers of light glowed on a lower slope headlamps. Moving with purpose, moving toward the mountain's underbelly. Sloan wasn't waiting for approval anymore. Leon straightened. His fear didn't vanish, but it settled into something sharper resolve shaped by guilt and survival. He turned back toward the station, Echo at his heel. All right, he whispered. We stand. The mountain answered with silence. Not empty silence. Expectant silence. Something old beneath their feet hummed faintly as if bracing for what was coming. And Leon knew the real fight had begun. By late afternoon, the wind sharpened into thin cutting blades that sliced down from the northern peaks. Pine needles rattled across the ridge. Static hung in the air, the kind that came before something irreversible. Leon stood on the relay station, porch tools strewn around him, staring toward the logging spur. The valley below flickered with orange. Not the soft burn of a controlled pile, a running line. Echo stiffened beside him, tail dropping, low ears pointed forward with needle-like precision. Leon whispered. They lit it. The words felt heavy in his mouth. The fire crawled fast, far faster than it should in the cool evening. Wind shoved it uphill, flames licking from brush to brush like hungry hands. Smoke lifted in dark sheets. Echo barked, once sharp and warning. Leon grabbed his pack, slung water canisters over his shoulder, and powered on the pump lines he had rigged days earlier. Water hissed from sprinklers, soaking the perimeter around the station. The ground steamed. He keyed the shortwave radio. Anna, it's Leon. They did it. Fire's moving. Static then, her voice tight and breathless. We're already calling mutual aid. 2 crews are mobilizing. They'll be up the valley soon. How long? 30, maybe 40 minutes. Too long. Leon looked down at Echo. We hold until then. Echo didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. The first wave arrived with a roar that felt alive. Flames curled over the ridge like a cresting tide, embers flaring outward in orange spirals. The heat struck Leon like a physical force. He staggered but held his ground. Backburn first, he shouted. He snapped the igniter he'd prepared, lit a thin strip of brush along the inner firebreak. The flames raced backward, burning fuel before the main fire could claim it. Smoke churned upward, merging with the larger plume. Echo stayed low, darting between flare-ups, barking warnings whenever sparks leapt too far. Leon hauled the pump lever. Water blasted out, soaking the ring of earth again. It hissed on contact, creating a wall of steam that slowed the incoming fire by precious seconds. A shape materialized through the smoke, Noah, coughing face streaked with soot. I came as soon as I saw it, he gasped. Anna called, they're on their way. Leon nearly cursed at him, but the moment didn't allow it. Stay behind me, he ordered. Do not break the line. Noah nodded, hands trembling. The fire hit the backburn. For a moment, Leon thought it might hold. It didn't. A gust of wind shot embers straight across the line, igniting a dead pine stump that went up like an oil can. The The flames stretched higher faster. Echo barked frantically and lunged toward the east slope, where another line of flames crept toward the hidden tunnel entrance. Leon's heart slammed. They're using the fire as cover, he realized aloud, because through the smoke, moving shadow-like between flickers of flame were men. 2, maybe 3, carrying equipment. Heading toward the secondary access Leon had tried to block days earlier. Sloan, Leon growled. Noah's head whipped toward him. What do we do? Leon made the choice that would define him. We fight on both fronts. Echo with me, but Echo didn't follow. Instead, the dog sprinted toward the main tunnel entrance toward Noah. What Echo? Noah yelled. Leon understood instantly. Noah, stay with him. Then Leon launched himself down the slope toward the shadowed figures flanking the fire. The heat was suffocating. Smoke clawed at Leon's throat. He navigated by memory and instinct more than sight feet skidding on loose ash. 2 men emerged through the haze contractors in protective jackets, hauling a portable drill head on a wheeled sled. Behind them, Barrett Sloan walked with eerie calm, a bandana covering his mouth, goggles reflecting the flames. Leon shouted over the roar. Stop, Sloan didn't. He simply lifted one gloved hand. Keep going, he ordered his men. Leon closed the distance in seconds, grabbing one contractor by the arm and yanking him off balance. The drill sled toppled sideways. The man hit the ground with a grunt. The second contractor lunged at Leon with a crowbar. Leon dodged the metal grazing his shoulder. Pain flared. He slammed the man backward into a boulder. The crowbar dropped. Leon kicked it away. Sloan's voice cut through the smoke. This doesn't need to happen, Leon. Leon turned chest heaving. You lit a fire on a dry ridge. To clear debris, Sloan said, eyes calm, and maybe motivate you to leave. Everyone wins. This isn't a chessboard, Leon shot back. People could die. Sloan shrugged. Progress never comes without sacrifice. Leon stepped forward, fists clenched, but a crack from the fire line snapped his attention sideways. A burning pine split at the trunk. It toppled downhill, smashing through underbrush. Leon shoved one contractor out of its path, barely avoiding the collapse himself. Sloan seized the moment. He sprinted to the drill, sled, shouting, push it upright, move. Leon growled through clenched teeth. Not today. He charged. Sloan pivoted, swinging a heavy wrench. Leon caught his wrist twisting. Sloan grunted but retaliated with a knee to Leon's ribs. Leon staggered. Smoke blasted between them. Then a bark ferocious echoing cut through the chaos. Echo. Noah. Leon spun around. The boy was nowhere in sight. Echo wasn't barking for Leon. He was calling for help. Leon tore uphill, lungs burning. He stumbled through flames, branches, embers raining down. Echo barked again, closer now, but frantic. Leon knew that tone. Distress. He found them halfway up the ridge. Noah stood frozen near a section of tunnel roof that had begun to sag. The heat had destabilized the old beams. Rock dust rained down in gritty showers. Leon, Noah shouted. It's collapsing. Echo shoved at Noah's legs, trying to push him toward a safer path. The dog's hackles were up, eyes wild with instinct. Leon lunged. Move, Noah. The boy stumbled backward just as a slab of rock, sheared loose with a deafening crack. It slammed into the ground exactly where Noah had been. Leon dragged him farther uphill. Echo circled them, barking directions, yes, directions, herding them along the only safe route. Another section groaned under strain. Leon pulled Noah tighter. Echo, find a way. The dog sprinted ahead, weaving through brush and smoke. He paused at a narrow cut between boulders and barked twice, sharp, insistent. Go, Leon shouted. Noah squeezed into the cut. Leon followed. Echo backed in after them, blocking the entrance with his body as burning debris tumbled past. When they finally emerged into clearer air, Leon collapsed to his knees, coughing hard. Noah bent over, shaking. I thought I was dead. Leon gripped the boy's shoulder. Not on my watch. Echo pressed his head into Leon's chest, panting hard. Sloan's voice echoed faintly below, shouting orders, cursing the fire. Leon rose slowly. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. Not from Sloan, not from his past, not from responsibility. He wiped soot from his eyes. Noah, he said quietly, stay here, don't move. Echo, guard him. Echo obeyed instantly, positioning himself between Noah and the ridgeline. Leon turned back toward the slope. He had one last move to make. The hidden aquifer's secondary entrance was framed by 2 massive boulders, sturdy but not immovable. Leon had studied the maintenance logs. The rock layers here were brittle when exposed to intense heat. Controlled pressure could trigger a small, targeted collapse, enough to destroy a drill, not enough to trap anyone inside. He reached the entrance just as Sloane and the remaining contractor shoved the drill sled into position. The machine's engine whined, ready for deployment. Sloane didn't look up. "You're too late, Leon." Leon's voice cut through smoke. "Step away from the rock." Sloane laughed once, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You think you can win this with a moral speech?" "No," Leon said. "With leverage." He wedged a long pry bar, the one he'd scavenged weeks earlier, into a natural crack between two leaning boulders. The rock groaned, dust falling. Sloane's eyes widened. "You can't control that." Leon didn't look back. "I only need a second." He pulled. A crack snapped through the ridge like a gunshot. A plate of rock shifted. The support beneath the left boulder gave way. Sloane stumbled backward. Wait! Leon dove sideways as a mass of stone thundered down in a violent, earth-shaking cascade. It slammed into the drill head, crushing it into twisted metal and burying the entrance beneath several tons of rock. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. Embers scattered. The fire line momentarily slowed by the sudden rubble. Sloane lay coughing, pinned under a fallen branch, but alive. Leon crawled toward him, muscles screaming. "Don't move." Sloane glared through soot-covered goggles. "You destroyed everything." "No," Leon said, pulling the branch away. "I saved everything." Sirens wailed from the valley, fire crews arriving at last. Their lights flashed in the distance like a rescue beacon. Anna appeared moments later with two firefighters' eyes wide as she took in the collapsed entrance. "Leon, what did you do?" Leon looked at the shattered drill, the sealed aquifer, and then at Echo standing guard over Noah silhouetted against the smoke. He exhaled. "What I had to?" Fire crews swarmed the ridge, rerouting flames, stabilizing hotspots, and escorting the injured downhill. Sloane was taken into custody, initially for trespassing during a wildfire, but soon to face broader charges once Anna presented evidence of illegal ignition points. By dawn, the fire was contained. The ridge was scarred black. Trees burned to spires. Smoke drifted over the valley like a tired ghost. But the relay station still stood. So did Leon. So did Echo. So did Noah. Anna approached him at sunrise. "They're calling this place a protected watershed now. County officials want to classify the ridge as restricted land. No development. Ever." Leon's shoulders eased for the first time in days. "You did that?" Anna said gently. "No," Leon replied. "The mountain did." Echo nudged his handtail, finally wagging. Anna smiled. "What will you do now?" Leon looked at the rebuilt firebreak. "The station. The tunnel entrance is sealed. The valley below waking under pale yellow light. I think," he said slowly, "I'll stay." Echo barked once, as if approving the decision. Anna laughed softly. "Then the ridge is in good hands." Leon looked down at his dog. "Two pairs," he corrected quietly, and for the first time since he'd arrived on the mountain, the weight in his chest felt gone. Not like he'd buried it. Like he'd finally put it down. The mountain healed slowly. Weeks passed before rain softened the blackened soil. Before tender shoots of new green pushed through ash. Before the forest grew quiet again, not the tense quiet of danger, but the soft-breathing quiet of recovery. Leon walked the ridge every morning. The air smelled different now. Smoke had long faded, replaced by the clean bite of winter pine and the faint sweetness of thawing sap. Echo padded beside him, gait steady, despite the singed fur still growing back around his flank. Noah came on weekends hauling scrap wood and old metal to help Leon rebuild the storage shed. The boy no longer flinched at sudden noises, no longer folded inward when the wind roared through the trees. Echo stayed close to him, always the two forming a bond no fire could take. Sometimes Anna hiked up from the valley, notebooks tucked under her arm. The mountain fascinated her. She said its recovery rate was abnormally rapid, tapping her pen against her clipboard, eyes bright with scientific wonder. But she also said something else, one quiet morning, as they stood by the sealed boulder pile. Places like this, they don't heal unless someone protects them first. Leon didn't answer. He didn't have to. One evening, when the sky burned gold above the peaks, Leon sat on the porch with Echo at his feet. The world was silent except for a distant stream and wind brushing lightly against the tower's iron legs. He thought of the man he had been when he first climbed this mountain, tired, hollow, convinced he hadn't earned a second chance. A man running from the echo of a blast half a world away. A man who didn't believe he had anything left to give. The mountain had changed that. Or maybe the mountain had simply uncovered what he still carried. Echo shifted, placing his paw on Leon's boot. A small gesture, but one he had made countless times, sometimes during nightmares, sometimes during silence, always at the exact moment Leon needed grounding. You found me before anything else did, Leon whispered. Echo's ear twitched. Leon looked out over the ridge. The setting sun cast long shadows through the recovering trees, highlighting patches of stubborn green pushing through charred earth. Life insisting on itself. Hope insisting on itself. They'll forget this fire in time, Leon said softly. People always do. But the mountain wouldn't, and neither would he. He thought of Sloan of men who saw land as numbers on a page. Men who pushed forward because no one had ever stopped them. But they had been stopped here. Not by force, not by violence. By an old mountain, a determined hydrologist, a stubborn boy, and a dog who could sense danger before daylight ever saw it. And by a man who finally chose not to run. The wind changed direction, carried the sharp, clean scent of snow, carried something else too, an echo of water under stone deep and steady. The aquifer, still alive, still untouched. Leon exhaled slowly as though releasing years he'd held tight. Echo lifted his head toward the breeze, ears forward, sensing something distant but peaceful. The mountain no longer felt like a refuge he'd stumbled into. It felt like a calling he'd finally answered. Leon rested a hand on Echo's neck. "We're staying," he murmured, "not just to protect it, to grow with it." The horizon dimmed, softening into dusk. A single star appeared above the ridge, sharp, bright, unwavering. And in the stillness, with Echo warm against his leg and the healed mountain stretching beneath them, Leon felt something he had forgotten how to feel: home.